Hi everyone and welcome back to She Stitchin'. This is Melanie. I'd like to thank you for joining me today for the spike cluster stitch tutorial. I'm going to be teaching you how to do two different types of spike cluster stitches. We're going to be learning the smaller 3-stitch and the larger, the 3 spike cluster and then the 5 spike cluster. So they look a little bit different. You can see a little bit better in the sample that the 5 spikes are really big and the 3 spikes are a little bit smaller. This video is a part of our series, Just Another Crochet Along, where you can learn 48 new stitches and then make them all together into a sample blanket. I have some of our other stitches here in the background. If you like the look of this, of stitches that drop down below, this is our angel wing pattern. And you can see it drops down. It's a little bit harder to see in this dark color, but it also drops down. And then this one is our feather stitch. And that's also dropping down and overlapping with each other. So if you like the look of these stitches that drop down below, you can also check out those. Now if you want to make this pattern for the crochet along, you're going to want to use your 3.5 hook to maintain the gauge for the crochet along. So this is the smallest hook that we use. And I have here my boye ergonomic set where this needle came from. And the first 4 rows of this pattern are going to be all single crochets. So if you're doing the crochet along with me, go ahead and start out with a chain of 31 and then skip 2 and go back and do 29 single crochets, and that'll get your first row of 30 stitches. So it'll be 29 single crochets plus that 2 for the turning stitch. And then you're going to chain 2 and turn, and you'll end up with 4 rows of single crochet. And then we're going to start with the row of spike clusters. Now, if you're not doing the crochet along with us, these stitches, they take up, the small spike clusters take up 3 stitches, and the larger spike clusters take up 5 stitches wide, or 5 chain spaces, and 3 chain spaces. So you can do this pattern however you like. I have it set up to do with a repetition of 5. But you can put less single crochets in between. I also set these up so that the pattern, so that they're on diagonal rows with each other. So you can kind of do whatever you want, but I think that this was the coolest way to make it look. So here you can see I did it with a nice dark background color and then 2 alternating colors that, you know, contrasted a lot with that black, or that dark blue. And then this is with 5 different colors, just to kind of show you the different choices that you can make. And then I worked one up here and it's all white, and then with a rainbow cotton, that's a variegated rainbow cotton, just to kind of show you what it looks like. So you got some different choices. For my sample today, I'm going to be using some Super Saver, and I have got this brown buff color. And then the variegated yarn I'm going to be using today it's Aspen. It's also a Super Saver. And then I'm also just using like a cream color. So I went ahead and started off and I made those 4 single crochet rows, and they're 30 across. So I'll join you at the end of a chain and just review single crochets with you, and then we'll get started with the spike clusters. So as I mentioned before, the first rows are all single crochet. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over that with you. I just worked up a really small chain of 5. Now for this pattern, what we're going to do is we're going to skip the first 2 bumps. So 1 and 2, and then we're going to go in the 3rd one there. And we're just going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull loop back through, and then yarn over and pull through 2. So that is our single crochet. And then we're going to do that all the way across this first row. Okay, so I'm only going to do, I think it'll be 5 single crochets here, but you'll go ahead and do all 29 all the way across. And then for this row, the way that we're going to be jumping up, so once you complete your first row, so you'll really actually have 29 single crochets there. Once you finish that, what we're going to do for this pattern is just to chain 2 and turn. And then we're going to skip this first spot. Make sure you don't go in there because that is being used for that chain stitch, okay? So skip this here and then go here and do single crochets all the way back across. All right, and just for the way that this stitch balanced out to make it even in the middle and not off center, that's the turning stitch that I wanted to use for this pattern. Now this pattern is also available on my WordPress blog, and the link is in the description. It's 100% free. There. I know. Before I do this, when you get to the end, make sure we are going to be using that turning stitch, that turning chain on this pattern. So make sure you get through the front and the back loops of that first, those chain stitches that we skipped when we started row 1. Okay, so then you do the single crochet. Okay, so that's what you'll do for the first 4 rows. You just chain 2, skip that first spot, and go ahead. And then I will meet you to show you how I'm doing my color changes on the edge to do a pulling yarn, which you guys don't have to do. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up now. So here I have our sample, and you can see I've done 4 rows. I've almost finished this last row, but I just want to show you how I'm changing color. So I'm doing 3 colors, and I'm just pulling the yarn up the side. It's called a floating yarn. That way I don't have to cut any ends. That's why I like to use an odd number of 3 yarns so I can not cut so much. So I'm just going to finish off this row. So once you get to the end of your single crochet rows, it's always best to double check that you have the 30 stitches, because I think to make, even though single crochet is supposedly the most simple stitch, that's where I seem to make the most errors counting stitches on the edges. Okay, so for our last stitch, in order to start that, I had just left my yarn dangling here from before. So for the last stitch, what you do if you're doing this type of method is you're going to insert your hook, yarn over for the first part of the single crochet. Then for the second part of the single crochet, you're going to go back to that other carrying yarn that you're pulling up the side and just yarn over and pull through to finish off the stitch. And then that ends the row 4 and gets you ready to start the next row with your next color. So here I have 30 stitches across, and then I'm going to chain 2, and we're going to start row 5, which is where our cluster rows start. So like I mentioned before, I do have this available on my blog if you need still frame photos, because placing our hooks down below into the foundation of your blanket or whatever you're making, it does get a little bit tricky. So if you're having problems with that, make sure to check out the blog, okay? So we're going to have our first 2 is chain 2, and then we're going to do 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. All right, and now we're going to get started with our first spike cluster. And the first spike cluster of the pattern is the 5 spike cluster. Now here, this I did when I was out of state, and I didn't go as bold with the spike clusters, because you can technically do this by placing your hook in any spot. So you can see here, these are much wider than these. So I was out of state working in the car, and I didn't realize I wasn't making those as bold as I could. So then when I got home, when I made the tutorials, I made the spikes a lot more bold and a lot more wide. And I think I like the way this looks better. So I'm going to go ahead. So if yours don't look exactly like this, they should look like this. Just wanted to explain that before we go. All right. So you can see here in the future, I have some stitch markers placed. So I suggest using a stitch marker for this pattern, just because it's really easy to skip or lose stitches when you're doing the clusters, because you're going to have so many loops on the hook and the stitches are a little bit wide. So what you're going to do is skip a stitch and place your stitch marker into the next stitch, okay? And that will show us when we come back, that'll show us after this spike cluster, that's the stitch that we're going to want to use. Okay, so now we're going to be going into the negative space. So you can think of this light brown row as our base row. So all of the stitches now are going to be working like negative down. We're going to be working down below, sub-freezing levels, okay? So the first stitch we're going to be in this white level. So you're going to go down 1 level, and we're going to go, so this would be down 1 level exactly, okay? And then we're going to go backwards 2 stitches. So 1 stitch, 2 stitch, and that's where you're going to want to insert your hook. Okay, so insert your hook there. And then we're going to reach around the back and grab the yarn, pull it over, and then pull it all the way back up, pulling quite a bit of slack into that stitch so that you can get your hook to the height of a normal single crochet. And that's the first little spike for our cluster. Now, oops, sorry, I grabbed the wrong yarn there. Now the next one, what we're going to do, so last time we went down 1 row and backwards 2. This time we're going to go down 2 rows and backwards 1. So we're going to go down 2 rows, so down to the white row, then down to the color changing row, You can see the colors are changing here. And then we're going to go back one stitch, backwards one stitch. Another way you can help locate to this stitch is if you just go on a diagonal down from our last spot that we inserted our hook. So we're going to go in here, yarn over the back, pull it through, then pull it all the way up, and now we have 3 loops on our hook, and that's what we want. All right, for this next one, this is going to be the long piece that drips down, the longest spike there. You can see it's going to go all the way down. So we're going to go down this time to all the way down to the beige row, which is your starting row. So we're going to start right here, and we're going to go down 3. 1, 2, and 3. All right, and then you're going to insert your hook, pull the yarn through the back, and pull it, oops, my yarn split a little bit there, I didn't grab it all. Pull it through the back, and then pull it all the way up. Okay, and then you're going to want to make sure that you pull that all the way up, otherwise your it's going to get curvy a little bit later. It's going to start to cup, so make sure you pull that up and they're not pulling it down too much. Okay, all right, so now we have 4 loops on, and now we've gone down as far as we are going to go, and you can see they kind of go let me see if I can change how I'm holding this. They kind of go in a diagonal line down, and now we're going to do the other side and do a diagonal line back up. So there's 2 different ways you can find your next spot. You can just go in a diagonal line up and go right there, or if you're a little bit unsure, what we're going to do now is we're going to go down 2 rows. So 1, 2 to the color change row, and then we're going to go forward 1. All right, so that's our spot right there. So you're going to insert your hook, pull the loop back through, and pull it up nice and tall, and now we have 5 loops on the hook. Okay, and now for the last one, we're going to go up to that next diagonal spot there. So it's going to be down 1 row and forward 2 spots. 1, 2. Okay, so or you can just go up diagonal 1 spot. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull it through, and now we have 6 loops on our hook. Okay, so you're going to yarn over and close, pull all the way through and close that off. There we go, you did your first spike cluster. Now this is the harder spike cluster of the 2, which maybe that wasn't smart for me starting out the pattern that way, but that's how I did it. So we have that first big spike cluster. And it kind of looks cool in this yarn because each of the spikes are changing color. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do 4 single crochets. Now I placed that stitch marker there to make sure that we don't skip this stitch, because all these yarn here are getting in the way, so it kind of makes it so it's very easy to skip this stitch, so that's why that stitch marker's there. Now if you don't have stitch markers, you can use bobby pins, paper clips, or even just another color of yarn. So we're just going to do 4 single crochets now. So insert your hook into that next stitch. Make sure in the back that you're not going on that side of the yarn, just because it'll look funny. So the back of this, or let me finish this off and then I'll show you the back. So we're going to do 4 single crochets now. So I'm going to take that stitch marker out because sometimes it makes your stitches, the tension, a little bit looser if you leave it there. So now we're just going to do 4 single crochets. Oh, looks like I stuck it through in the wrong spot. There we go. So we're going to do 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I was off screen there. And 4. I have a new camera holder, so my angles are a little different than normal. So you can see we've got the 4 single crochets. And now, since I was talking about that, I'm going to show you the back. So this yarn, these colors blend together, so it's a little bit harder to see. But the back of this is just going to kind of look like teardrops. So you're not getting the cool effect on the back. So this is a one-sided stitch. So, and then in the multicolor, I'll show you what that looks too. Okay. Let me move this up a little bit so I stop going off screen so much. Okay, so now what we're going to do is the easier of the 2 spike cluster stitches. This is just the 3 spikes. So once again, I have skipped a stitch and then placed the stitch marker to make sure I get that correct stitch the next time. So this time we're just going to go down 1 row and backwards 1. So it's a lot easier to find. So just down 1 row and backwards 1. Then insert your hook and pull it back up. Oops. Sorry, I've got a lot of yarn going on here. Okay, and then the second spike is going to be down 2. So in the 0 spot, and just down 2. 1, 2 right here. Yarn over, insert your hook, and pull it back up. Okay, so now you have 3 loops on. And then the next one, you're just going to go down 1 row and over 1. So also it's going to start going back up in that diagonal line. So down 1 row and over 1. There we go. Yarn over, pull the loop back through, and then you have 4 loops on. And then yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. And that finishes our small spike cluster, or the 3 spike cluster. And then we're going to do the 4 single crochets in between. So insert your hook, yarn over, and do 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now I'm going to go ahead and review that 5 spike cluster with you again. And like I said before, if you're having trouble with the placement of the hook, go ahead and check out the blog, because the still frame photos might help you a lot. Okay, so now we're going to do that larger spike cluster again. Let me just untangle a little bit here. Okay, there we go. So we're going to go down 1 row. So we're going to skip over this first row and go to the white row. And then we're going to go back 2 spaces. So 1 space, back 2 spaces. So down 1 row, 1 and 2. And we're going to insert our hook here, yarn over, pull the loop back up. Make sure you pull it up nice and high so that the tension stays good. And then we're just going to go down. Oh, I didn't go back far enough. Sorry, guys. I was doing the small cluster again. So we're going to go down 1 row and back 2. Yarn over, insert your hook, and pull it back up. And then next we're going to go down to the color changing row. So we're going to go down 2 rows. So 1 row down, 2 rows down, and then only 1 spot back. Then insert your hook, yarn over, and pull it back up. All right. So now we've got like those 2 side spikes there, these 2 little outlets. And now we're going to go down and do the deep one. So we're going to go down 3 rows. So here's our 0 spot. 1, 2, 3, all the way down to that first row. Yarn over and pull it back up. Oops. My spikes got a little bit messed up there. Pull it all the way back up. Okay, so then you should have 4 loops on. And then next, we're going to go start working our way back up. So we're going to diagonal 1 up to here. So skip 1 spot. So we're going to go forward 1, down 2. Yarn over, insert your hook, and pull it back up. And then next, we're going to go down only 1, and then over 2. Okay, so you kind of follow that diagonal line back up. All right. There we go. We've got all of those on. So we've got 6 loops on. Yarn over, and pull it all through. Okay, now you can see all of our spikes going down. And then you can also see why it's so important to keep that stitch marker in there. Otherwise, we would have totally lost that stitch. And then make sure you get through there. Don't skip that guy. Is that even the right one? Yeah, it is. So make sure you get through there, but not in front of the yarn. And do 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go, perfect. So now I have my next stitch marker here, and I'll do that small spike cluster stitch again. Okay, so we're going to go down 1 and back 1 for this easy small spike cluster. Yarn over, pull it back up, and then we're going to go down 2, 1, 2, insert, pull it back up, and then we're going to go forward 1, down 1. There we go. And we've got 4 loops on. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull it through all 4, and there's our small cluster. And then you can see my stitch marker here, so we're going to do 4 single crochets in between. 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. And then the last spike cluster for this row is going to be another large one. Okay. And then after that, I'll show you how to finish the row and how I'm pulling my yarns up the side. All right. Oh, I'm going to put a stitch marker in here. So skip one spot and put the stitch marker in. Especially for these big ones, it's hard to... Especially for the larger spike clusters, it's hard to get into the right stitch afterwards. I'm dreaming right now of doing this pattern in black and white. So, and doing something for myself after the blanket's done. That's what my dream is for this. I think it would look so pretty in a high contrast. I'm doing it all black and then 4 rows of white right here like that. So, look for that. If you're not on my Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, I have some other accounts where hopefully I'll get to that. All right, so now what we're going to do is another big spike cluster. So we're going to go down 1 row, so we're dipping into the white, and back 2. 1, 2. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull it back through. For the second spike, we're going to go down 2 rows. 1, 2, and back 1 spot to here. For the third spike, we're just going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3. Insert your hook. You want to get that space in between the stitches. Pull it back up. I need a little bit more slack, so I'm going to yank on this for a second. Okay. For our fourth spike, we are going to go forward 1 spot and down 2. So forward 1 spot and down 2. And you can also find it by just going up diagonally. Yarn over, insert your hook, and pull it back through. And for the final spike, we're going to go down 1 and forward 2. 1, 2. Also, you can find it just by going diagonally up. So, sorry, I was out of frame. So down 1 row to the white row, and then forward 2. 1, 2. Also, you can find it by going diagonally up. Yarn over, insert your hook, and pull it back through. And then you've got 6 loops on your hook. So yarn over, pull through all 6 of those spike loops, and there's our final for this row. So now I got to go back and find that stitch marked stitch. Kind of pull this spike out of the way, maybe that'll help a little bit. There we go. And make sure I'm not pulling on that spike at all. Let me show you from the back what it looks like. So I'm in that same stitch where I place the stitch marker, and I'm just making sure that I get on the other side of that yarn from the spike cluster. Okay, and then I'm going to do, at the end of the pattern, the end of the row, we're going to end with 5 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if you're changing color like I am, I'm going to pull up my color on my last stitch. So I'm going to yarn over and do single crochet, but I'm going to pull up my white yarn for the last pull through of the stitch, and then just leave the aspen color hanging there. And that's how I bring my color up for the next stitch, or for the next row, I'm sorry. So that was row 5. That's probably the hardest row because it's got 3 of those larger spike clusters, which are harder than the small ones. And now the next row is just going to be this kind of, this is a chamomile colorway. And what kind of yarn is this? I always forget the name. In the sugar and cream. So this is the chamomile colorway is going to be the next row. So we've got these 1, 2, 3 rows here. This chamomile, this darker green, and then this blue are all going to be just single crochets. So we're going to do 3 rows of single crochets now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do, so actually I just showed you. So now I'm going to go ahead and do these single crochets off of camera because you should already know, if you're trying to attempt this, I'm assuming that you already know how to do 3 rows of single crochet. So go ahead and do 3 rows of single crochet, and I'll be back with you to help on the next stitch. So when you do get to the spike clusters, the stitches are going to be a little bit more spread out than the other single crochets, but that's okay. You're just going to go in and you put one stitch into the top of the spike clusters just like you would into one stitch of the single crochet. Okay, and that's kind of, you can see the gap is a little bit bigger, but it's really not that big of a deal. Okay, so go ahead and do the 3 rows of single crochet. Make sure that you still have the same amount of stitches that you started out with, and I will see you for the next row of our pattern. The next row of our pattern is going to have 1, 2, 3 small spike clusters and 3 of the bigger spike clusters, and it just kind of offsets it. So I'll meet you in a few minutes. Go ahead and press pause. Okay, so now I have gone ahead and I finished 1, 2, 3 rows of all single crochet, and I'm just going to finish off this 3rd row with you. So you can see how I'm changing the color again. So the next row I'm going to be doing is white. So I'm going to start the row and finish it off with this aspen variegated yarn that I have right now. So I'm going to finish off. I'm going to get in the front and the back loop of this turning chain. There we go. Sorry about that. And I'm going to do half of the stitch with the aspen, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull up the white. And all you do with the other color that you're leaving behind, you just leave it there and you'll grab it later. And then just pull that through like that. And then we're going to chain 2 and turn. And then the pattern, so we have the chain 2 and turn, and then we're just going to have 1 single crochet right here. And now we're ready to start. So like I said before, this row is going to start off with the small cluster, and I'm going to be doing it in the white this time. So because I'm going into the variegated row, I'm not going to use the stitch markers. I'm just going to remember that there's a blue stitch and the gray, and then I'm going to go into that first tan stitch, but you can definitely move your stitch markers up if you want to. So now we're going to do a small cluster. So we're going to go down 1 row and back 1 row, insert our hook, yarn over, pull the loop, yarn over and pull the loop through. And then we're going to go down 2, so 1 and 2. We're going into that white row, pick it back up, and then we're going to go up diagonally, so forward 1, down 1. There we go, and then we have our 4 loops on, and then we're going to close that. And then I skip that blue stitch like we talked about before, and I'm going to go into that next one. And we're going to do the 4 single crochets in between, just like before. So we start and we do that small cluster so close to the edge so that we get that offset pattern. 3 and 4. And then we're going to do that large cluster again. It actually looks pretty cool with the white, makes it stand out a little bit more than that variegated yarn was doing. Alright, so we're going to skip the gray. I'm going to remember that we're going to go into that light one there. Okay, so we're going to go down 1 and backwards 2. Insert your hook, pull the loop through. And then we're going to go down 2 and backwards 1. Pull loop up. And then we're going to go down 3. 1, 2, and 3. Insert your hook, pull it up. And then for the next one, we're going to go forward 1 spot and down 2 spots. 1, 2. You can also just start to go diagonally up. And then we're going to go diagonally up or forward 1, 2, down 1. There we go. And then close off your large cluster. So this is actually looking pretty cool with the white, I think, on top of this other colors. Let me pull some slack here, sorry. Alright, so we skip that green stitch, and we're going to want to go into that first one that you can't see here. There we go. And single crochet. So then we're going to do 4 single crochets. So I'll go ahead and do both of those clusters with you again. But you should have everything that you need to know for the pattern. After you do this row, you're going to repeat rows 2 through 9, the whole rest of the pattern. So you'll just pick up here and start repeating. Like I said before, all of the stitches are available on my YouTube channel, and all of the written patterns are available on my blog. So go ahead and check the description for links. So for the small cluster, we're going to go down 1, back 1. So the small cluster, we're going to go down 1, back 1. So it's going to add up to 2. All of the all the spikes will add up to 2. And then for the middle spike, we're going to go down 2. So 1 and 2. And then for the third one, we're going to go forward 2 and down 1. So 2 plus 1. Okay, that's one way to, if you're having trouble remembering how to do it. And we do our 4 single crochets in between. And then when the large clusters, if you add up the math, we're going to add it up. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. Sorry about that, jump cut, my phone rang. So for this last, like I was saying, the large clusters, they're going to add up to 3. So for here, we're going to go back 1, or sorry, down 1, then back 2. And that'll get us 1 plus 2 is 3, right? So down 1, back 2, and we insert our hook, yarn over, pull the loop up. And then next, we're going to go down 2 and backwards 1. So down 2 and backwards 1. Okay, yarn over, pull the loop up. And then this one, we're going to go down 3. So 1, 2, 3. Insert your hook there. Pull it all the way up. Alright, get that slack in there, sorry. And then we're going to go forward 1 and down 2. Pull the loop through. And then we're going to go forward, or down 1 and forward 2. 1, 2. And insert here. Pull the loop back up. And then pull through all 6 of those loops. I'm just tugging on that a little bit to make sure that it stays nice and tall. If you don't get these loose enough, they're going to cup. And it's going to start to make your fabric make a bowl. And if you do it too loose, they're going to be really dangly and easy to snag. Alright, and then we had 2 stitches in the blue there, so I'm going to skip 1 stitch and then go to the next one. Insert my hook there, make sure you're not losing any of those stitches, and do 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to do that small cluster again, the 3 spike. So we start off, we go down 1 row and backwards 1. Yarn over, pull the loop up. And then we're going to go down 2 rows, yarn over, pull the loop up. Then we're going to go down 1 row, forward 1, yarn over, pull the loop up. Got all 4 on, yarn over, and pull through. I forgot to look at the colors again. So now we're going to skip that one and go into the next one here. It's a little bit easy just to see because I'm using that color changing yarn. So if I wasn't doing that, I would definitely be using those stitch markers. 1 single crochet, 2, 3, sorry, my boys are starting to get loud, and 4. So now we are going to skip this blue one just so that I remember. And we're going to go down 1 row, backwards 2, insert your hook, pull the loop up, down 2 rows, 1, 2, and back 1 stitch, and then down 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, forward 1, or then we go down 2 and forward 1, then we go down 1 and forward 2, down 1, forward 2. You can find that diagonal line. And then we have, I'm getting a little bit too tight here. But if this was my blanket, I would probably do this one again, just because it's pretty tight. Yarn over and pull through all of them. I think that this cream is not a super saver, so it's a little bit less, it's just something I'm using from my stash. It's a little bit less flexible than the super saver, so I'm having a hard time adjusting between the yarn types here. Oops, do not put a chain on. Alright, so we skipped that blue, and we're going to go into that next color. And then your pattern's just going to end with 3 single crochets to finish off this row. And then after this row, you're going to go ahead and pick it up and start doing the 3 rows of single crochet again, and then you repeat row 2. So I'm just going to insert through the front and the back loop, There we go. There it is. It's always a little bit hard getting into those trimming chains for me. Pull through the first one, and then I'm going to grab that brown that I left down below. And switch my carrying yarn. Sorry, my kiddos. And pull that through to finish off that row. And then I chain 2 and turn. So that's how I change colors. And that's all of the pattern that you need to know. So it is, I had a little bit of a difficult time choosing colors just because I knew I wanted to have 3 different colors so that I could easily identify with you guys the rows that I was going down to. But I don't know if I would do a full thing with these color combinations. It's a little hard to see all of the extra work that I'm putting into this. So thank you for sticking around to the end. I really like this stitch and I'm excited for the things that I can do with it. I really want to try doing like all of this white and then doing this next section black and then doing all of this white and then the next section black, just because I'm in a high contrast mood right now. But I hope you've enjoyed this stitch as much as I do. I think it's a lot of fun and easy to do. I also did work it up in Christmas colors, but it kind of, a lot of the work gets hidden. So I didn't show that one at the beginning, and I just remembered right now that I had it. So I hope you guys enjoy. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below, and I try to get those to you, the responses back to you as soon as I can. I also have an Instagram and a Facebook and a TikTok, and you can find all of that information in the video description. I also have a Tumblr, but I haven't been on there too much. And if you're really into Pinterest, you can also find all of these on Pinterest. Make sure to check out the blog for the written description, for the written tutorials, and they're all free. And I think that's everything. If anybody asks, oh, let me show you what's coming up next. So up next, we're going to have a really easy stitch. It is called Easy Tartan. So we will be doing this next stitch, and I'll try to get that out to you guys as soon as possible. I will see you soon. If anybody asks where I am, just tell them she's stitching.